Hello and welcome back. This is Jennifer McGuire. Recently, there was a Creativation craft show where companies show retailers their newest stamp products and dies and such. I was most impressed by the products from Altenew, so I'm excited today to do a card and product showcase featuring some of these new products from Altenew. Normally, my videos are very technique focused, sharing techniques that you can do with different stamps and dies. But today I'm showing you specific projects to do with these stamps and dies because they are so fantastic. And also at the end of this video, I will show you the newest Altenew ink colors. Now I'm going to start out with these cards that you see here. They are all faux cross-stitched stamped cards. So using a stamp set, I'm able to create this beautiful faux stitching effect. And I have 3 examples going from simple to more advanced. I'm using the Altenew Sewn with Love stamp set. This is a stamp set that builds to create a faux cross-stitch flower, and there's also 2 hearts in there. And when you stamp them, it looks like you cross-stitch them. There are also some great sentiments in this set. You can also get the Altenew Sewn with Love die set. It pokes all the little holes in case you want to stitch the flower or the hearts. So you can use these together or just use the stamp. And I'm going to show you a few different options. I'll start by using this die to poke all the tiny holes to do the stitching for this flower. I'm not actually going to stitch it all, but I'm going to create the holes with this die. I'm using my Gemini Junior die cut machine, but you can use any die cut machine for this. Again, this won't cut any lines, but rather will just poke all those tiny holes. And you'll be able to see them here in the white cardstock. Next, I'm going to follow that dot pattern and add the stamping to it. I'm using my MISTI stamping tool simply because I'm doing 3 cards at once, but you could definitely use an acrylic block if that's all you have. I'm starting with the first flower image. This one lines up with the top of those little flower dots that I just created, and it lines up very easily. The little X's line up with the dots that you have die cut. So I'm inking this up with a soft color ink, stamping that, and while I have this all set up on another piece of white cardstock with no die cutting, I'm going to stamp it again but with a different color ink. So I'm creating 2 cards here at once. One is with blue ink, so it'll create a blue flower without the holes punched, and then this peach colored one with the holes punched. I just wanted to show you what it looks like with and without the die. So I'm moving on to this second layer of this flower. I really shouldn't say layer because they don't layer on top of each other, but rather build together to create the complete flower. And I was really impressed with how easy they line up. I was pretty surprised. And by the way, I will give you a closer look at all of these ink colors at the end of this video. They're all new from Altenew. Now, after you've done all of your stamping, you do have the option of adding stitching to this. You can follow the pattern that you just stamped to create cross-stitch pattern. I will link to a video showing how to do this cross-stitching on cards. Now, I only did a little bit of stitching on one of my examples, just some dark colors here and there, and I used DMC floss, which you see in the background. I only used 2 ply, and I used a very thin needle. Again, be sure to check out the video that I'll link to here. Now, before I show you the final 3 different versions, let's add our sentiments. I decided to use my MISTI to make sure I didn't mess up the sentiments at this point. That little L-shaped piece is a creative corner that you can use to make sure things are straight when you put them in your MISTI. So I wanted to make sure that sentiment was straight before I stamped it. Now when I stamp a little sentiment like this with lots of detail, I usually stamp it once very lightly and the second time very lightly, just to make sure that I don't over stamp it. Now on each of the different cards, I did 3 different sentiments, and I'll show you where these stamps are from in a moment. Okay, so here are the 3 different cards. This blue one here is just the stamping. I did not use the coordinating die, so you can see that it looks like you stitched it, but you only stamped it, and it doesn't take much time at all to put that together. Then I added the You Are a Treasure stamp set, and I call it a day. Very simple to stamp and create. Now this second one here, I first used the coordinating die to pierce the tiny little holes, then I stamped it. and it almost looks more realistic even with the holes just pierced and no actual stitching done. So you can see the difference between the two. That middle one definitely looks a little more real, even though I did no stitching. And then finally, for the third example, I added a little bit of stitching here and there. You could definitely stitch the whole thing if you wanted to, but I wanted to save a little bit of time. But you can see that really adds quite a bit to the final card, even though it didn't take long. This stamp set and die set were definitely favorites of mine from that Creativation craft show. I think they're so amazing. They will be coming out with more versions of this kind of faux cross-stitch look in the future, and I'm really excited for that. I really enjoy doing the actual stitching, but I know that's not for everyone. So here is a way that you can get the look of stitching without actually having to do it. And I really like the handmade feel of it. Now, before we move to the next example, I wanted to show you these stamp sets where the sentiments came from. The small I'm Here For You came from this Altenew Forever and Always stamp set. This has beautiful sentiments and outline images that would be fun to color. I also used the Sending You Crafty Hugs from this Altenew Crafty Life stamp set. Altenew came out with a stamp set full of crafting sentiments probably about a year ago, and I've used it so many times, and I'm so excited that they've come out with another. There are so many clever sentiments on here that you can use on any cards for crafty friends. I'm going to use another one of the sentiments a little bit later in this video. You'll see me use this in many videos in the future also. Okay, on to the next example featuring these new Altenew products. Here I have a very simple card that features another new fun stamp set and a little bit of stitching using the die that I showed you earlier. So for this one, I used the new Birds of a Feather Altenew stamp set. Now this one has 3 simple birds that you can build, and they're very easy to line up. But what I really like in this set are the sentiments, especially that thanks for being a friend. I think it's beautiful and unique. Now, when I get my Altenew stamp sets, I cut the package out so that I can keep the little guide to how to layer up the images. So I cut this out of the packaging and I keep it right there with my stamp set. And there you can see the 3 different birds that you can build with this set. I'm just going to do the pinkish one in the middle. I'm starting by stamping that thanks for being a friend sentiment with black ink on white cardstock. Now that little bird there I had practiced on a card, and I'm using him as a guide to figure out where to do my stamping on this card. But I will use that little spare bird to the right on another card. So I'm stamping each of these pieces with different colors of blue inks from Altenew. These are new colors. Again, I'll talk about these in a little bit. But you can see how easy these are to layer together. They create very simple, solid images that are beautiful, but if you want to, you can add some simple shading with a white colored pencil or Copic markers. Now I stamped the little eyes and the little beak and the feet, and after that I decided to use that tiny little stitch heart die that I showed you earlier in the video. Running this through my die cut machine, any die cut machine will work, and this pokes the holes so that I can do some simple stitching for a little heart that overlaps with the bird. So I went and I did the stitching while I watched a TV show, and now I'm finishing up the card here. All I did was add a few little pearls that are colored red to match that stitching. I added black Nouveau drops for the eye and a little white Nouveau drop on top of that for a little bit of a highlight on the eye. I kept this card very simple, but that bit of stitching really makes it pop and stand out. I think that bird is beautiful, and again, you could add shading to it, but I like the simplicity of this. Okay, on to our next example. Now this one features probably the most amazing stamp layering set I have ever seen. This is the Ornamental Flower stamp set from Altenew. And this layers together very easily to create the most dynamite flower. The nice thing about this layering flower is that you just need to line up the outside edge of the flower, which is easy to do, so you can get perfect layering every time. I'm following the guide that is in the packaging, which you can see there to the right, and I'm using my MISTI stamping tool because I'm creating 2 flowers at once, so I can save one for a later card. But you can definitely use an acrylic block. I tried it and it works great. So I'm starting with the most solid image first and working my way up to the image that has the least amount of stamping. Now I decided to do 2 at once, so I position the stamp onto some white cardstock so I can stamp it once, then shift the paper down and stamp it again to create 2 flowers at once. Now I didn't line it up just perfect, so the second time I need to shift it down to a certain mark there on the left, but I just remember that mark and I do it every time to the same position. Now you can see that the second image is very easy to line up because I'm lining up the outside edge of the flower every time. There's no guesswork. When you put it down, you'll be able to see through the stamp very easily for good positioning. So I'm stamping this in my second darkest color. I'm working my way up to darker and darker and darker. There are 4 layers for the outside of this flower, so I use a light, a medium, a dark, and a very dark colored ink. Then I'm going to build up the middle images in the flower too. That's what's so amazing about this particular stamp set, is it layers up the outside of the flower and the inside. So you can do different colors for both. And you can see the great detail that you get with the layering. So I'm using some orange colors for the center of my flower here. You could use any colors that you want, but I wanted something that kind of blended a little bit. If you can't find 4 colors that work together perfectly, don't worry. These all overlap with each other, so they'll blend together to give you a beautiful look. Okay, so I went ahead and cut these out by hand, and I also stamped and cut out some leaves from the same stamp set. And I added a little sympathy greeting from a stamp set that I'll show you in a few moments. So this card is very simple outside of that stamping, and that's what's great about this stamp set. It provides so much detail that you don't need to do much to the rest of the card. I did add tiny little white dots to the stamping with a white gel pen, but other than that, you're good to go with the stamping alone. I really am impressed by this stamp set because it gives such great detail, and it's easy to line up since you're lining up the outside of the images each time. By the way, I don't work for Altenew. I'm just a really big fan of their products. I think they're very well designed. Okay, now for my last example, I used 2 of the new Altenew stamp sets. The first one is the Crafty Life stamp set that I showed you earlier with the Crafty sentiments, and the second is the Altenew Build-A-Flower stamp set that you see here. This actually came out last month, and it's a stamp set and a die set that are sold together. This one is especially neat because it has beautiful sentiments in it, and the dies create little score lines to give dimension to the flower. There are many ways you can use this stamp set, and it's a very simple layering set. And the dies cut out the flowers without a white trim around it, which is something that I really like. Now you can either stamp this first and then die cut, or vice versa. I decided to stamp first. So I'm stamping the solid image with a light color, then with a color a little bit darker, I'm stamping the next image. Next, I'm going to do the die cutting, but I'm first going to die cut it from some scrap paper. So that's kind of off to the side here. You can see some of my mess up stamping on the back. I'm going to run that through my die cut machine, and now I'm going to take that negative space and line it around my stamped flower so it's perfectly positioned. There is wiggle room with this so that you really don't have to get it just perfect, but once I have the negative space around my stamped flower, I'm going to pop the die in like a puzzle piece, tape it in place, and run it through my die cut machine. This will ensure that I die cut that flower perfectly, and check it out, no white trim around it, absolutely beautiful. And this does provide the score lines to give some dimension to the flower. Now I use the same stamp set to create 2 different leaf sizes and 2 different flower sizes. They're all very easy to do, and they all give that die cutting without the white trim. Now I am folding along the score line to get a little bit of dimension out of each of the pieces. Now I did stamp a sentiment from that Crafty Life stamp set that I showed you earlier. And now I am squirting some really strong liquid adhesive behind the flower so that when it dries, it keeps that dimension. I'm also going to tuck some of the leaves behind, again using that strong adhesive. In the middle, I'm putting 1 foam adhesive square and adding the other flower on top. I want to keep as much dimension as this as I can. I will mail this in a padded envelope so that it is protected. In the center of the flower, I'm adding a new Lucy's Cards Chunky Rainbow Sparkle Jewel. These are a larger size jewel that are perfect for the center of flowers. Around the flower, I'm scattering a few simple pearls just for accents. Now, once I have everything in place, I am going to take more of that liquid adhesive and I'm going to put big blobs of this behind my flowers and leaves. I'm going to put quite a bit of this so that I can let it dry on its own and it will help keep the shape of that flower. This is a fun little trick when you're creating something like this that you want to try to keep as much of the dimension as possible. Now for the note card this is going on, I have a sentiment from the Crafty Life stamp set. I'm making sure it's straight by using my little creative corner there. This is a great way to keep it straight. And I'm going to stamp it repeatedly onto this craft note card, which is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. I'm starting in the middle because I'm covering up that section in the middle with my stamped piece that I just created. I'm stamping it repeatedly with white pigment ink. Each time I stamp it, I'm shifting it down 1/4 inch in my MISTI. This is so easy to do with the stamping tool. If you have an acrylic block, I do recommend drawing little pencil lines to help you get it straight. But you can see that this is something that with the tool, you can just simply create a background very quickly of a sentiment. I then am going to stamp towards the bottom portion of the card. I could have just done the whole thing to cover up the whole background, but for some reason I decided to do it this way. I then glued that little floral panel right over the center, and here we have our finished card. I like having that sentiment kind of subtle in the background so that the focus is on that dimensional flower and that main sentiment in the center. Before we go, I wanted to show you a closer look at the new Altenew ink colors, which I've been using in this video. Now, Altenew usually comes out with inks in sets of 4, which you can buy individually or as a set, but they are meant to be a light, medium, dark, and extra dark of the same color. One of their new sets is Tea Party, which are the 4 colors on the bottom here: Pink Pearl, Coral Bliss, Heartbeat, and Vineyard Berry. It's a nice kind of peachish color, maybe like a pinkish orange color, really bright and vivid, and that's what I used a lot today. You can see how it compares to their current pink colors, which are above, and with the orange, which I'll show you here in a moment. Now, by the way, I do have a free ink swatch download over my blog, so you can create your own ink swatches, like the ones that you see here. I just find it helpful in quickly finding the colors that I want. Now, these inks do stamp great right away. I've never had any problems with them, especially when you use a high-quality white cardstock. Now, the next new set of ink colors from Altenew are the greens that you see on the top here. This includes Minty Mint, Sweet Leaf, Just Green, and Hunter Green. And you can see how they compare to the other greens that Altenew has. This has more of a mint or true green color to it. That Just Green is a beautiful kind of Kelly green that I think I'll be using quite often. The third new set of Altenew ink colors includes Dewdrops, Aqualicious, Teal Cave, and Galactic Stream. Like you can see here, it's a beautiful aqua line of colors. You can also see how it compares to the other Altenew colors that are in the same color family. Now, I will say that these inks are fantastic inks that give great results, even with solid images, and it makes color layering very easy because there are light, medium, dark, and extra dark that go together nicely. You can buy the full-size ink pads individually or in a set, or you can buy the set of 4 mini ink cubes together. So I do like the mini ink cubes. I think it's a great way to get more colors for your money. I just happen to have the full sizes to use today, but either are great inks to have. Okay, so if you want the ink swatch download to create your own swatches, head to my blog. Also on my blog, I'll have photos of all of these cards. Below in my YouTube description, I have a link to all of the supplies that I use. And I know this video is a little bit different than the technique videos I normally do, but I hope you enjoyed it just the same. Thanks for watching. I'll be back soon and have a good week.